Welcome back. You're still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. The time is just a minute past 9 a.m., and we are in the second hour of the show, and we're going to be kickstarting the second hour of the show with a very, very important topic as the Israeli bombardment of Gaza continues to intensify and the humanitarian crisis worsens by the minute. The United Nations has once again returned to its decade old refrain, a two-state solution. At a high-level conference in Geneva this past week, world leaders reiterated their calls for a return to negotiations between Israel and the Palestinian Authority. But in the aftermath of October 7th and the subsequent devastation in Gaza that is so well documented, a genocide that is live streamed, many are asking, is this a renewed call for peace sincere, or is it a diplomatic smokescreen? Is the two-state solution still a viable path forward when it comes to Israel and Palestine politics, or has it become a convenient excuse for continued inaction, as we've seen over the years? To help us unpack this, we're joined now by Dr. Ahmed Jazbhay. He's a lecturer in political science at UNISA and also a researcher with the Media Review Network. Dr. Harun, always a pleasure. Jazakallah so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media and good morning.
Jazakallah for having me.
And I think we can kickstart the conversation on the note of the two-state solution. It has long been considered, the international consensus when it comes to Palestine and Israel politics. But many now say it's dead in the water. Do you believe it was ever viable? And what do you make of the UN's renewed push for it?
I think you took the words out of my mouth to begin with. I mean, it was never viable to begin with. A two-state solution is a justification, a reward for 78 years of Zionist settler colonialism. To talk about a two-state solution is to justify the genocide, epistemicide, and ethnic cleansing of Palestinians that started in 1948 and which continues to this day. So what is going on in Geneva now with this UN conference, boycotted by the United States and Israel, and I'm very glad it's boycotted by the United States because after many decades, it has finally lifted this facade of, of two-state nonsense that they talk about all the time. The Trump administration has removed that veil of stupidity, to be honest, around the two-state solution. It's not viable. It was never viable to begin with. It is simply something that allows the colonized world, the West, to be honest, more specifically, to assert their conscience. As they got rid of their Jewish problem. And I say that Jewish problem in inverted commas because this is how it was talked about during the 19th century and early 20th century in Europe. Europe wanted to get rid of its Jewish problem, and they got rid of it by creating Israel in Palestine. So they got rid of that. Now they've seen what this has created, a genocide, an epistemicide, and ethnic cleansing, and now they want to talk about two-state solution, supported by the bunch of useful idiots in the name of the Arab world, in name of the Bantustan Authority headed by Abu Mazen. This rewards genocide. This rewards ethnic cleansing. This rewards Zionist settler colonialism in Palestine. There can be no Israel in Palestine. So when we talk about two-state solution, it's a facade. There can never be. Even the idea, Salelo, of a nation state is something we should do away in the long run. But for the time being, we must talk about a one state, which guarantees the rights of all peoples, Jews, Muslims, and Christians within that land as we've lived prior to the advent of Zionist settler colonialism.
How much of this push for a two-state kind of framework is being used to sideline or to delegitimize resistance movements like Hamas or broader Palestinian calls for liberation? And I think we can also make parallels with South Africa, during the dark days of apartheid, and just make parallels of what would have a two-state solution look like here in South Africa, and what would it have hoped to achieve? And I would think at the parallel and detriment of the indigenous people of the country.
Again, you're on the ball. This two-state solution that is always talk about, and Emmanuel Macron said it himself, as well as Abu Mazen, that the idea of a two-state is a militarized Israeli entity armed to the teeth by Europe and the United States, and a demilitarized Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza without the ability to defend itself, at the mercy of the settler colonizer called Israel. So even the idea of what they call a state, a two-state solution, goes against the very definition of a state. Politics 101, if you study politics 101 at university, we talk about the idea of a state. What it must have the power or the monopoly of legitimate violence. Legitimate violence meaning it must have the ability to protect its people and control its borders. The two-state solution that Macron and this so-called conference that Saudi Arabia is co-sponsoring is talking about is a two-state solution where Israel controls all the borders, controls the land, air, and sea borders of this, phantom Palestinian state that they talk about. So it is not really a state in the very definition of a state. Even the current state of Israel is the only state in the world that does not have clearly defined borders. It was allowed as a UN member without clearly defined borders. And that is another characteristic of a state, is that it needs to have clearly defined borders. Israel does not have clearly defined borders. Israel will be given the license to so-called mow the lawn, as it has been doing in Gaza since 2006, and now full-scale genocide. It will be allowed to go into West Bank should there be a flare-up of any resistance efforts there. It delegitimizes the Palestinian right to self-determination. The two-state illusion, we should say illusion, not solution, that they talk about is those in the diaspora, Palestinians in Jordan, in Egypt, in Syria, in Lebanon, around the world, will not have the right to return. That's a fundamental right of any people. So what are we talking about? Saudi Arabia, I'm very sorry, Saudi Arabia simply is trying to do anything in order to now just jump into bed with Israel. It wants to normalize with Israel at any cost. But it knows that domestic public opinion in Saudi Arabia is against normalizing. So it wants to push this illusion of a two-state living side by side, the usual rhetoric that we hear about. It delegitimizes resistance. Hamas, Islamic Jihad, and other smaller resistance factions will be rendered meaningless. And they are fighting for river to the sea. We, as Muslims, as for Palestinians, the only just solution is the return to the borders of historic Palestine, the return of refugees, not some Bantustan, disconnected Bantustan that will be able to be invaded at will. So we need to ask the tough questions.
No, most definitely. I know you touched on the USA, who have boycotted this conference, this United Nations conference. One of their State Department spokesperson described it as a gift to Hamas. Hamas, which continues to reject ceasefire proposals that have been accepted by Israel, and proposals that could ultimately lead to the release of their hostages and bring calm to Gaza. What do you make of this? What do you make of this rhetoric coming out of Washington?
Washington is using now the collapse of the negotiations as now trying leverage to pressurize the resistance movement in Gaza. What we must understand is that the negotiations weren't negotiations to begin with. They wanted the return of the hostages, whilst after 60 days returning back into the Gaza to continue the genocide. The Americans know that, and we must also look at the other elements. APEC controls American foreign policy. We know that the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee, they control American foreign policy, and they control it to such an extent that Donald Trump will talk about a ceasefire one day and next day complain that Hamas is collapsing the negotiations. Hamas understands that if it now allows a return to the genocide after 60 days, and Israel has taken away about 30 of their hostages, then the biggest bargaining chips are gone. So Hamas wants an end to the war. Islamic Jihad wants an end to the war, to the genocide of their people. They want Israel to return to the pre-October 7th lines. But Israel does not want that. Israel wants to ethnically cleanse Palestinians because, and this is another element I'll come to, is that Ben Gvir and Smotrich, they hold the keys to that very fledgling coalition in Israel. If they move, Netanyahu coalition collapses, and then Netanyahu has to now answer for his sins, his corruption sins. So there's many elements. There's APEC as well as the domestic Israeli element. So accusing Hamas of collapsing negotiation, Hamas wants to end this. But the Americans know that because of the stranglehold that APEC has on them, and they again trying to ensure that Netanyahu can survive this should the war end. So there's many elements why the ceasefires are going on, and why the United States does not want to attend this conference, that it's a support for Hamas. It will be but if anything, a two-state solution will be a reward for Zionist settler colonialism, not a reward for Hamas and the resistance movements.
Most definitely. I want to move on to something that I think it's considered a glimpse of positivity. I think it was last week Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, where the French President Emmanuel Macron took a decision that France will recognize Palestine as Palestine statehood. And from your opinion, what can we make of this? What can we make of the fact that we have a European country, which is one of the most important ones in the Western world, the Western power? They are in the G7, and they are recognizing Palestinian statehood. Does this reflect a slow shift, particularly in the West, when it comes to Palestine and the genocide and war that has been inflicted on the people of Palestine since 1948?
The simple answer, no. But what Macron is trying to do is that he's trying to quell domestic discontent within France. You must know that France has the largest Muslim population in Europe, for starters. It has a large pro-Palestinian grouping within France. Despite its vile Islamophobia, it has a very large pro-Palestinian group, even among native French, for that matter. So they don't care about the Palestinians. And we must ask, what kind of two-state are they talking about? What kind of recognition are they talking about? It is not recognition for the resistance. It is not recognition for Hamas. It is recognition for a Palestinian Bantustan. It is recognition for Abu Hamad, Mahmoud Abbas, and a demilitarized Palestinian state without sovereignty. This is what they're talking about. They're talking about a non-sovereign demilitarized state. It goes against the very definition of a state. That they don't have the right internal sovereignty as well as external sovereignty. Can you imagine that? So this is what the French are talking about. This is what the Spanish are talking about. This is what we should be opposing, to be honest. It is not a shift in rhetoric. It's trying to also, as I said at the comments of this question, it is trying to assuage their domestic discontent within France and within Europe. They don't want a sovereign, independent Palestinian state. They want a Palestinian state that would be subservient to the whims and fancies of Israel, for starters, of the United States, as well as Europe.
And I think going to even that note, people should be taking Emmanuel Macron's comments and rhetoric with a pinch of salt. It's only serving his internal politics, and as you've mentioned, to try and quell the discontent internally. We're going to read for now, Dr. Harun. Really appreciate it. Always a pleasure, and looking forward to chatting to you again in the not so distant future.
Shukran for having me.
There you go. That was Dr. Ahmed Harun Jazbhay. And yeah, I think a very, very important conversation. He's a lecturer in political science at UNISA and research with the Media Review Network, weighing in on the UN's renewed call for a two-state solution, a framework that many argue is outdated, it's ineffective, and even in a lot of ways complicit in preserving the status quo of occupation and apartheid. But what do you think? After nearly 8 decades of conflict, repeated failed peace talks, and now a genocide in Gaza that has shocked the world, a genocide that is so multifaceted. There are drones, there are bombs that are being dropped on the people of Palestine, on the people of Gaza. But there's another angle to it, which I think right now, at this moment, deserves a lot of attention, critical attention. The issue of starvation, where the Israeli government in itself has made sure that the only way to wipe out the people of Palestine in their entirety, to wipe out the people of Gaza, is to starve them to death. Young children, babies that have not even reached, I don't know, 6 days, 3 days, 4 days. Their mothers can't produce enough milk to sustain them because they don't have food to eat. You can engage with us. Two-state solution. Do you see it as viable? Do you see it as a solution to the current status quo? Or it is dead, it's outdated, especially considering what we've seen happen from October the 7th. Our studio line is 01168000355, or you can send us a WhatsApp voice note on 061 7660355. Is the two-state solution still a path for peace, or just a diplomatic illusion meant to gaslight the people of Gaza while they die from starvation and from a genocide that is live streamed and all of us can see in real time? Looking forward to engaging with you on that one. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, News and Views continues.